to my mind, the United States has been not the most constructive actor in the world scene for several decades, actually. I have been a bit chagrined, really, for 30 years about American foreign policy, and mostly because I saw at a very personal way and also a professional way how many opportunities for peace the U.S. Squandered needlessly. I was an advisor 35 years ago to President Gorbachev on the economic reforms of the last moments of the Soviet Union. And when the Soviet Union went down, President Yeltsin asked me to be an economic advisor for his economic team. I can tell you without question, without any doubt whatsoever, 35 years ago, we had the chance for sustained peace in this world without any fundamental conflicts. The Russian leadership absolutely wanted it. They sought it. They wanted it in a very practical way. And the problem, from my perspective, which I only understood step by step over many years, is that the United States didn't want cooperation. It just wanted victory. It wanted its way. It wanted what came to be called the unipolar world, the idea that with the Soviet Union gone and China not on anyone's radar screen back in the 1990s in geopolitical terms, the United States ran the show, so they thought. And I basically lived through, professionally, close up, more than 30 years of the United States trying to run the show. And it has not gone well. It's been nonstop wars. It has been unnecessary provocations. In the case of Russia, I'm definitely a strong minority view, together with my friend John Mearsheimer, that what happened in Ukraine was basically provoked by the United States over many years. I saw a lot of it close up. The war in Ukraine could have been avoided easily on countless occasions.
Right.
It could have ended immediately in March 2022 because there was actually a peace agreement that was on the verge of being signed, and the United States stopped that too. So these are tragic mistakes of foreign policy. When it comes to China, I am of the view, for those of you who have happened to see me in one way or another on video, for example, I'm basically of the view that, sorry, let me just turn off my phone. I'm basically of the view that China's big mistake vis-a-vis the United States was to be too successful, and that China has not done anything, in my view, and I mean anything, other than what a normal major country would do to provoke the kinds of reactions and attitudes from the United States. That what happened in the U.S. was that with China's rise, starting around 2014, in a very methodical way, the United States came to view China as not only a rival, but therefore as an adversary, because it was a rival in scale, in success, in technology. And what the United States wanted was primacy, or hegemony, or unipolarity. And that all of what has happened is basically an American reaction to China's success. If you want to see that very well documented, I'm sure many of you know the paper, but there's a very, very clear, vivid explanation of American foreign policy in a paper in 2015 for the Council on Foreign Relations by Robert Blackwell and Ashley Tellis, called something like a grand strategy towards China, or a revised grand strategy towards China. And it spells out in completely vivid terms what has ensued for the past decade. Because what Blackwell, who was my colleague at Harvard for many years and a friend and a very smart person, but I disagree with him on the most basic point, what he writes in that 2015 paper is that America's grand strategy is primacy, and China's rise is therefore no longer in America's interest. This is an astounding idea. It's basically the idea that success elsewhere is disadvantageous for the United States. If you take that view, you are bound to live in a world of nonstop conflict. If the advances of other places are to your detriment simply because they are advances, you are condemned to view the world in conflictual terms. But Blackwell says in the first sentences of this essay, America's grand strategy has always been to be number one, and therefore China's rise is not in America's interest. And what he and his co-authors spell out is a list of 8 or 10 specific steps. We should make trade arrangements that exclude China. This is extraordinary. This is what President Obama tried to do with TPP. We will have a trade arrangement in Asia without China. Duh. Sorry. Look at a map. Look at some data. This is not a good idea. And the list goes on. Build up the military around China's perimeter. Not a good idea for peace. Put on barriers to export of technology. I'm talking about 2015. This already started 10 years ago. And what's very interesting about the Council on Foreign Relations documents is that they are not statements of views, they are explanations for the community of the Council of U.S. policy. So this was not a view of Blackwell, what should be done. This was a description of what American policy would be. And it's been carried out pretty much systematically since then. So if you point these things out, you're viewed as a little bit impolite in Washington. So my lack of welcome to Washington goes back many years. But I can tell you the feeling is reciprocated. I don't even want to go to Washington, so I don't, except on very rare occasions, because there's nothing to do there. It's not constructive. You're not going to find answers. There's no one really to talk to. There is a view. Well, that brings us up to the current situation, because things are changing, but it's quite complicated how they're changing. I don't think they're changing in a stable direction or a stable approach. There's one thing that I very much appreciate of what President Trump is doing, which is to try to end the war in Ukraine. I think the war will end because it can't really continue without American support of Ukraine. And I believe, despite an administration that reverses policies by the hour, that there won't be a reversal of U.S. policy vis-a-vis Ukraine, because no segment of Trump's movement has any interest in putting more funding into Ukraine. And the fact of the matter is, while the early days of the Trump administration have been consumed with foreign issues, the next months will be consumed with domestic fiscal issues, and asking for more money for Ukraine would be deeply perturbing to a very unpopular fiscal agenda that Trump is going to push through successfully in the next months, and supporting Ukraine would prevent that from happening. That's the only part of the Trump agenda I like. So they don't like me, probably, although I have some friends inside the government and had friends inside the previous administration and the one before that and the one before that. But we're seeing in other parts of the world tremendous instability and lack of strategy. In the Middle East, basically, unfortunately, and to my chagrin, it is probably a doubling down of the U.S. Backing of Israeli mayhem, which I regard as a genocide, and I regard as absolutely destructive of peace in the region. But I don't see Trump changing that. It's still early days. He once did tweet something of me calling Netanyahu an SOB, and Trump posted that, and then there were headlines in Israel for about 3 days. What did he mean by that? But apparently not a lot, because in the last days, we're back to Netanyahu's wars everywhere, war in in Gaza, war in the West Bank, war in Lebanon, war in Syria, war in Yemen, and what Netanyahu wants is a war with Iran, which could be a world ender, actually. I don't think we'll go to war with Iran, but the Israeli mayhem is not being stopped by Trump. It's actually rhetorically being encouraged by Trump. So that's a big disappointment for me. When it comes to trade, I don't have to say more than Trump is uniting the world because there is not a single place in the world that is satisfied with this new tariff regime, including inside the United States. It has succeeded in stopping the stock market rally and reversing it. It has succeeded in lowering automobile company share prices yesterday. I didn't check today, but down 5% yesterday when the automotive tariffs were issued. It's a completely ignorant economic policy as far as I'm concerned. We can talk about it, but I see no merit whatsoever on any count to the protectionism that Trump is trying to bring about. So there, the whole world is unhappy about it. And then when it comes to Asia, we'll discuss this, probably Trump and the administration probably want to avoid open conflict with China. Whether they are clever enough to do so, I'm not sure, but there'll be a lot of noise and instability. I predict, I'll make a prediction that is clear and therefore could be completely proved wrong. So I don't believe there will be any grand bargain or any great agreement between the United States and China on anything for years to come, because I think the U.S. administration is too unstable for anything like that, because any serious agreements require consideration and strategy. I, for one, don't believe that we have any of that in Washington now. I think we have improvisation, no role of Congress, basically a one-man show, executive orders, mostly illegal, court challenges that are proliferating by the day. So I think it's a mess, not a strategy.